Thank you everyone for attending this webinar on adapting the bathroom accessibility and aesthetics. Just a little bit about myself. I'm an occupational therapist. I've got 39 years of experience working in the NHS social care sector, and for the last 28 years in the independent sector, mainly working in the area of housing and consultancy for manufacturers and retailers. But my main clinical area of expertise and passion is about aesthetically pleasing, accessible housing. And I've added recently aesthetically pleasing because I think it is something that we are not addressing as a profession. And certainly as I get into that post-60 age, I'm looking for people and companies to design well for me as I age. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we go along. So I suppose my passion is about designing products that are going to meet my needs as I age. So the aims of the session are explain the importance and evidence for balancing functionality and style in accessible bathroom design, describe the kind of collaborative design approaches that involve clients and their families in the process, and review the assessment process for accessible bathrooms, including practical and design aspects. So let's start with some evidence. Somebody who I know for quite a long time, Frances Hayward, who was a prolific researcher into the effectiveness of adaptations in the early 2000s, came out with a report called Money Well Spent. And what she said in there was obliging people to have things that they do not want or like, or about which they have reservations, may result in wholly wasted expenditure. And I think we need to hold on to that, because if we don't design well, what are we doing to our clients? Are we giving them something that they actually don't want? And although that research is 25 years old, are we still creating environments that people don't want? And are we basing our recommendations from a therapist point of view rather than a collaboration with our clients? And the other thing Frances often talked about, and still does, was about that honeymoon period. So she said people could be waiting in her research for up to 2 years for a shower to be installed in their home. And the moment they got it was that time of joy, that the fact that they could independently wash themselves and they actually felt clean. But that initial joy when she went back 6 months post installation, there was a lot of people feeling it didn't fit in with their home design. And a lot of people were saying it meant that they didn't want their friends or family to see their bathroom. And to me, that is quite a sad state of affairs, and we need to understand why is that. So when I was looking at developing this webinar, I wanted to actually really understand what is the definition of aesthetics. So in home design, aesthetics refers to the visual, spatial, and sensory qualities that shape our interior environment. And then they go on to say, and this needs to consider colour, furniture, lighting, materials, and texture. And it really started me thinking, and I want to just break down some of these elements in here for you so we can just explore it a little bit more. So the spatial is about, it refers to the physical dimensions, proportions, and arrangements of a room. So you stand back and you go, don't we, as occupational therapist or a surveyor or an architect, consider the space in our assessment and design? We absolutely do, don't we? Because it's really important that that environment fits with the person and the tasks that they want to do. So the sensory design in interior design is a holistic approach that moves beyond traditional aesthetics and engages those five senses. And those five senses are the ones we generally know as occupational therapists, although there are more. But we do include the senses in our assessments. We absolutely do, especially if we're working with children with additional needs or behaviours that challenge, and we're trying to work out whether the environment can be changed to make their response to the environment more calming for them. But as occupational therapists, we may look beyond those five. And I would recommend this article by the Sensory Trust, which looks into all the other senses. And the one specific to me was the nociception, which is that the kind of psychological feeling of pain, because we do look at pain as part of our assessment process. And certainly when it comes to bathing, there is significant evidence that bathing reduces pain. So it's part of aesthetics, but it's also part of what we do as occupational therapists. And then you look at colour, and when you drill down in interior design around that aesthetics, Anthony Edwin says colour plays a crucial role in interior design as they contribute to the aesthetics appeal, psychological and physiological well-being. Well, the reality is we look at colour as well, don't we, as part of our design. And looking at this image, none of us would use this image for anybody with visual impairment issues because you can't work out where things are. So we're constantly looking at colour as part of our assessment process. So again, lighting. So in interior design, good lighting is seen as crucial to enhancing the aesthetics and functionality of the space. But we do that as well, don't we? We look at lighting. For example, if you're looking at a person, the task they chooses to do, say a gentleman shaving, you would look at how they were going to be able to shave with the facilities they've got. What mirror do they need? What lighting do they need around that mirror to allow them to see all areas of their beard or the shaving area under the chin? We look at that, but it's also, we would look at lighting around toileting, because actually being able to wash and clean yourself, you need to be able to see what you're doing. So we do, as occupational therapists, look at lighting as a critical element of the design. So again, the evidence says a psychologically well-designed interior reduces stress levels, increases productivity, and improves overall quality of life. Now, as OTs, we might not use the word productivity, we might use the word engagement in an activity that a client chooses to do. But actually, that statement from an interior designer is exactly what occupational therapists are designing to do. So, is aesthetics separate from accessibility? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. So, aesthetics are individual. And I just wanted to put these a few images in about aesthetics, because what's important to one person is absolutely not important to another. So I was sent this picture of this green bathroom recently by my goddaughter, who is in her early 30s. And her comment to me was, they're looking for a house. And she said, "This is the bathroom, isn't it wicked?" And I looked at it in absolute horror. But for her, it was funky. But the other image is very similar to the bathroom that I grew up with in the 70s, which my parents designed around going skiing to a Swiss lodge. We actually had a blue bathroom suite, but they love that bathroom. Even into their 90s, they love that bathroom. So we mustn't forget about individual choice in aesthetics. And just to give you an example with one of my clients recently, I spent Friday trying to find a yellow Art Deco bathroom suite for a client. She's building a brand new house. It looks like an Art Deco bungalow, and she wanted to fill it with traditional Art Deco products. Now, as a therapist, I'm looking at some of these in absolute horror about access, but we can get around that. But that is her individual choice, and we need to understand and ask our clients what meaning their home is to them and what products they want within that home. And I'll come on to time later because I can hear everybody going, we don't have time to do this. You're absolutely right. But let's just concentrate on individual choice and control in their bathrooms. I have to say on this, when we actually looked at more detail on this toilet, because of the way it's designed, it's going to be perfect to allow a commode shower chair to go over it. The only issue I have is, can you replace a yellow toilet seat? Are they available? But that's really a very minor detail for this client. What she wants is something funky. Might not be my choice, but it's definitely her choice. Or more contemporary look. You know, if this is might be what your clients are looking for. But fundamentally, it's about choice and control for the client. Do they have any involvement in their design? These two images are very functional, but they're also very beautiful. And again, are we thinking about this when we are designing for our clients? So it comes down to we all have different views on what we want in our homes. No two people are the same, but do we have that conversation with our clients? So then I went back and said, well, let's look at the definition of accessibility. And accessibility is the degree in which an environment, product, or service is tailored to fit specific persons' unique needs and abilities. And as occupational therapists, I think this is a perfect example. Suzanne Owarsum is a prolific researcher into the built environment and accessibility. She's Swedish, but she's come up with some really good evidence about creating accessible environments that allow people to flourish and thrive in their own environments and to actually do the things that they wish to or need to or want to do. So actually, let's just go with that. Accessibility is the degree to which an environment, product, or service is uniquely tailored to specific fit that individual's needs. And that's what we do as OTs, isn't it? But does it mean we don't have to look at aesthetics as well? So, you know, you come down to that person, environment, fit, occupation fit, do you? And the aim that we are looking at with bathroom design is to get them all aligned to allow for that maximising occupational performance. And that's the ability of the individual to engage in the activities they need and want to do. But also, I think when we're designing a bathroom, we also need to look at future proofing because nobody stays the same. A person's abilities will change regardless of who we are. As a child, you might be able to do certain things. As somebody who is older, who has issues around aging, will change. And the tasks that we choose to do within a bathroom will change as well. So the environment needs to be flexible to meet those needs. So delving a bit deeper into that, the person that we're looking at, that individual's traits, including their physical capabilities, cognitive processes, emotional state, sensory abilities, and cultural background, are really important when we're designing. But does this sound familiar? There's a huge element of the definition of aesthetics in that definition of what a person's intrinsic traits are. So are we separating the two unnecessarily? But also we need to look at how the person or the client or the patient we're working with actually does these activities. How do they use the bath? How do they use the shower? How are they using the toilet? And look, the task is kind of quite complex in all the activities within the bathroom. It may be the smallest room in the house, but some very complex, intimate occupations are happening in that space. And for me, the one thing that I've learned over my years is never assume. People use products differently, and I always suggest that you do what I call a wet dry run, which is actually get the client to do the activities if you can access the space, see how they use the rooms. So, for example, people get into a bath in a very different way, just as they get on and off the toilet in a different way. And I always use an example here of a gentleman who I worked with very early on when I worked independently. And I met him at Stoke Mandeville. He'd had a spinal injury following a road traffic incident. And he was trying to explain to me how he used the toilet. And it made absolutely no sense to me. And it was only when we went into the bathroom and I said, "Can you just show me, please?" And I realised he got onto the toilet facing the cistern, which is not the usual way that people use a toilet. So we had this whole conversation about him sitting that way. And his comment to me was, "It's great because I can put my iPad on the cistern and I can do my emails while I'm emptying my bowels." And I thought, well, that's a really good use of time. But then he said, "But I've always used the toilet this way," which kind of stopped me in my tracks. And what he said was he was in a family of a household of 4 boys and dad and mum was so fed up of wiping up drops in front of the toilet that she insisted that all the boys and her husband sat and peed that way so she didn't have to wipe up after them. So a wet dry run is really important. Actually look at how people are doing the activities. It's critical. But the environment is really important as well. And often within bathrooms, they're the smallest room in the house. So what you're doing in that space is really important to maximise that occupational performance. And it's not just the physical environment, it's the kind of social support. Are we going to have carers? Are there some cultural norms that we need to understand? But also we need to understand, is there any institutional policies that we have to work within or challenge? So, but that sounds very familiar as well, doesn't it? That lighting layout all sits within aesthetics. So for me, accessibility and aesthetics are going hand in hand. You need form and you need function to create an environment that actually meets our clients' needs. So why do we separate them? Why? Why do we separate them? And actually, shouldn't we be collaborating with our clients to produce an accessible, aesthetic adaptation that meets their needs? We should absolutely not be separating them. So it got me thinking about collaboration and specifically about professional standards. And for any non-OTs on this webinar, hopefully this might give you a little bit of an insight into some of the ethics and standards that we should be working towards. We're all, for those again who are not occupational therapists, we're registered with the HCPC, which is the Healthcare Professions Council, and we have to be registered practice. And part of that is we have to adhere to standards of conduct, performance and ethics. They've just been changed, actually probably it's 2024 now, but actually it's really important that we read them and review our practice. And the first one says promote and protect the interests of the service user and carers. And that is really important because that interests can be their functional needs, their physical needs, their mental health needs, But for me, for a client and a carer, it could also be their aesthetic needs as well. So treat the service user and carer with respect. And you must treat the service user and carer as individuals, respecting their privacy and dignity. And again, I don't think any of us would want to do anything but treat our clients with dignity. But again, when you start looking at dignity and what it actually means, it comes from that Latin word dignitas, meaning to be worthy. And all people have the right to be recognised for their inherent humanity and treated ethically. And again, I don't think any of us would disagree with it. But are we actually doing it? That's the question I would ask you. Telling somebody this is what we can provide is not dignity. Having blanket designs that meet the wider group of people, is that dignity? Not having a conversation about meaning of home and what our client truly wants, is that dignity? Now, I know I've used that word want, and I know there's wants and needs, but we need to balance between the two of them to actually have successful adaptations and not come back to that obliging people to have things they do not want or do not like is wholly wasted money. So we must treat our clients with dignity. And then 1.2 say you must work in partnership with the service user and carer, involving them where appropriate in decisions about care, treatment or other services. And again, for me, it is this partnership working. It's so important that we design with our clients. Now, I know time is a real factor, but I've just put an image of Victoria Plumbing there. It's a free drawing package that you could go onto in the Victoria Plumbing website, because sometimes our clients struggle to understand what it will look like. And you say, well, we're going to whip your bath out and we're going to put in a shower. And sometimes just having that 3D image allows our clients to understand it, but also go, well, where am I going to put my hooks for my towels? Where am I going to put a radiator? It allows that conversation to develop a bit more about the design and how that person and the tasks that they're going to do within that bathroom meet their actual needs. But we have a duty to work in partnership with our users and carers. So it kind of goes on, and I apologise if there's anybody from Wales, Ireland or Scotland, because this is an English publication. But within this publication, which was Disabled Facilities Grants, and it's a guidance for local authorities, in there are the 9 guiding principles for adaptations. And again, this came from Hayward. But this was published in 2022, so still extremely relevant today. And one of the 9 guiding principles is the need for some element of choice. And again, sometimes we need to just stand back and reflect a bit and think, if somebody said to me, you are only allowed white tiles in your bathroom, they can't be big white tiles, they can only be small white tiles, and you have to have a vinyl flooring. Where's the choice in that? Where's the dignity in that? And are we not giving them element of choice and control in what they are actually doing and what they would like in their home? But again, I have worked in social services, and I understand there are barriers to adding aesthetics into the form. So I sat back and said, let's look at those barriers. So One of the barriers I feel there is, and still is to this day, is because the Disabled Facilities Grant specifically is a grant given to people. Yes, it's means tested, but a significant proportion don't pay a contribution, and certainly children under the age of 18 and 365 days don't. But should we, and therefore we have a lot of this kind of comments, it shouldn't look aesthetically appealing because they're getting something for free. And I struggle with that. Nobody chooses to have functional difficulties within their home, specifically their bathroom. It's not a choice to have an adaptation in most cases. Most people would prefer to be able to live their lives without any barriers and be able to design their homes aesthetically to their choice. So nobody chooses necessarily to have a disabled facilities grant to enable them to live in their own home independently without support. So we need to get away from this, it's welfare, therefore it can't look nice. Cost money. People say we've got a finite budget. Absolutely, we have a finite budget. Style costs more, therefore should not be considered. Well, I think we need to challenge that as well. And I think the classic one for me is if you look at vinyl flooring, and there's various companies out there that do vinyl flooring, they're not the cheapest option. They are certainly functionally fantastic and they're slip resistant and things. But if you look on the market now, there are more and more tiles, and I know people are going to get really stressed with me, that are slip resistant. And you look at the cost, and they're no more costly than a vinyl flooring. And yes, you have to look at design slightly differently, and you might have to do an upstand of tiles around the edges to prevent that water seepage. But it can be done, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost more. So again, we need to think about what are we actually doing to our clients? Are we saying, well, you can only have the vinyl flooring because we've always done the vinyl flooring and that's what works? It does work. Absolutely, it does work. Functionally, it meets the need, but does it aesthetically? Because obliging people to have things they do not like is wholly wasted money. And then there's this organisational barrier, I think. That kind of traditional design, products meet need. We are not there to provide for wants. But wanting to have a bathroom that you like going into is really quite important because I've spoken to a few clients over the years who said, I hate my bathroom so much, I try and shower within a few minutes and get out of there because it really offends me. And that worries me because if people are doing activities quickly because they don't want to be in that room, there's a whole level of additional risk. That's the risk of trips and falls, not paying attention to washing yourself correctly, specifically feet, especially if you've got a client with diabetes and you need them to concentrate on observing, cleaning their feet. So by having these traditional designs, are we creating more risks? Not always, but in some cases, I think we need to consider it. And having templates is fine, but having some element of choice on design and aesthetics is really key. And we need to, again, sit back and go, how would we feel if we were told this is what you're having? And I would suggest most of us might get a bit miffed if we were told what we were having in our house. I certainly would. And then the time. Design costs time. We don't have enough time. And you're absolutely right. Design does cost time. But for me, it keeps coming back to this. Obliging people to have things they do not want or like, or about which they have reservations, may result in wholly wasted expenditure. So if you go back to these, if we spend a little bit more time, get the design right, it works for the client functionally, it works for them aesthetically, we're not wasting money, and therefore we're providing a service that really is client-centred. And I think if anything, or if any statement in your mind that you keep from this session, this is the one I want you to keep. And just sit back and think about what you would like if you were in a similar situation. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit. So as per the last slide, are we impacting not only the risk of our clients of not using the adaptation equipment, but impacting our clients' mental health? So I'll give you a really simple example of this, really. Raised toilet seats. They absolutely do work. They work really well. They enable a client to get on and off the toilet. But the biggest impact for people is that they hate how they look. So they hate how they look to start with, but then they're really difficult to clean. I have had a client who said the only way to clean them appropriately is putting it in the dishwasher. It did worry me a bit. I don't know whether that's the safest or most hygienic way of cleaning a raised toilet seat, but it worked for her, as she didn't have the hand dexterity to clean it really well, and she liked her home to be absolutely perfectly clean. But she said she'd had friends who'd had raised toilet seats who after a while just took them off and put them in the cupboard because they hated them so much. And the main thing was they don't have a lid. But say, for example, in 1 in 100 raised toilet seats issued, you have one accident and you have a hip fracture. Well, we know a hip fracture costs the NHS 35,000 a year. So why aren't we going, can we do it in a slightly different way? Can we just raise a toilet on a plinth? Yes, it costs more, but aesthetically it's more pleasing, and it might reduce the risks of trips and falls because people hiding their equipment in a cupboard. But as a profession, we talk about being really client-centred. And if we're not looking at aesthetics and we're not giving our clients some element of choice and control, are we truly being client-centred? Now, it's very easy for me to pontificate because I work in the private sector, and there is a bit of element that time is not as pressured as it is in local authority. But again, if we're not being client-centred, are we truly meeting our professional standards? Are we working in partnership with our clients? Are we supporting that choice and control? Are we allowing for dignity? And if we're doing the same sort of design for everybody, are we really truly being client-centred? So again, it's just, for me, it's a challenge. And the one thing that occupational therapists have, which I think is absolutely fantastic, is, and we're the only profession, is we're dual trained to consider the physical and the mental health issues of an individual. And we know our environment has a significant impact on our psychological and our mental health well-being. So if you go back to that evidence on that honeymoon period, if we don't provide something, again, are we really truly working in a client-centred way? So coming to kind of that assessment, create, form and function, occupational therapists work in the housing area are absolutely knowledgeable about assessing for and specifically looking at the needs of their clients from a functional point of view. So in the bathroom, you might be going, how do you access a bath, say for a child who needs to bathe? How does somebody use a toilet in the way that they wish to use the toilet? Can somebody use the hand basin and do all the occupations around a hand basin to allow them to do the activities like I don't know, shaving, putting up makeup, all the things you need to do around that space. So we're very good at looking at that function. But assessment to create function and form just slightly changes things. So I thought I'd go back to some of the elements that you might look at in your assessment. Not all of them, but some of them. So when we're looking at adapting and we look at lighting, which is both a functional need and an aesthetic need, the first thing we need to be doing is, can we maximise the use of natural light? It's always better. Are we looking at central lighting? How does that look like? But also task lighting for specific areas. And again, talking about makeup or shaving, task lighting is really important. But also mood. So if you're working with clients or children with behaviours of concern, are we looking at the lighting that actually encourages that child to feel calm and safe in that space, be able to regulate them, to be able to do that physical activity of personal hygiene, but allows them to do it in a way that is calming for them. So an environment that is actually specific for their needs. And then you look at heating and ventilation. And often, sometimes this is kind of not always looked at. I'm sat in a room in London, and they obviously think that it's so hot outside that we need to freeze. Um, I'm wishing I had a cardigan and trousers on and even a coat, it's so cold. And again, that makes me think heating is so important in a bathroom where you're naked, you're vulnerable, the tasks take longer. So how much heating do we actually need to actually have in that space? And for me as a therapist, I will always look at additional separate to central heating, so we can keep that room at a temperature that meets the needs of that client. I completely understand within the statutory sector that underfloor heating might not be a consideration because of cost and installation and longevity. But actually, in some instances, it is the best form of heating for our clients and must never be dismissed. And I always say, with all our adaptations, you have a toolbox and never take something out of that toolbox, because there might be just a client who needs something slightly different. But again, when you're looking at heating and how you do that heating, you might be looking at a low surface temperature heating. So again, if you've got a child with a challenging behaviour who might be holding on to radiators, if you've got a low surface temperature, that will really help. But also what's key for me is that ventilation through natural means. Can our clients physically open windows if they need to? And again, you need to assess for that, don't you? And then flooring. Are we specifically specifying what flooring is required? Is it slip resistant to avoid those falls? Is it non-reflective for people with dementia so they don't feel like they're walking into a pool, which will stop them going into that room? Are we getting the colour contrasts right for our clients? A classic one is showers. Can somebody actually see a shower? I don't know how many of you on this call who wear glasses, but I do. And I find when you go to unfamiliar environments, specifically hotels, and I'm often walking into the shower with my glasses on because I can't understand the controls and the heat. So again, it's thinking about that colour requirement within that space. Can I understand hot and cold? I went off on a tangent there, sorry. I was supposed to be talking about flooring. But colour contrast is really important, so people know where a shower starts and where a shower finishes, where going into the bathroom starts and finishes, where a toilet is, where a hand basin is. Colour is very useful in designing a space that makes it usable for our clients. But in this, we can also discuss aesthetics. It is, what kind of colour slip resistant flooring do you want? what kind of additional heating would you like in your bathroom? What kind of mood lighting would support your client to engage in the activities that they need and want to do? And again, looking at sensory when you're doing this assessment, we've talked about lighting, but also about noise. Again, coming back to children and adults with sensory processing issues, noises in the bathroom can be really kind of what's the word? Impactful on an individual. The noise of a flushing toilet, of a filling bath, of a sink, of a fan. It's trying to understand what the environment needs to be. So, you can get low noise fans. Yes, they're a little bit more expensive, but actually they might be better for your client's sensory needs. But also, if you go slightly more expensive, you can get something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And do you give choice and control to your client about what they want? And I do want to put in accessories in here. I know, should we even be discussing this? But I have a real thing about accessories. Accessories make a bathroom work or not work. And if you're, for example, getting in and out of a bath, where are your towels situated? Can you as an individual access them? Can your carer access them easily? So it's, where are you hanging towels or folding towels? Where are you placing them? And my real bugbear is toilet roll holders. A toilet roll holder is part of the activity analysis of somebody using the toilet. Unless you're using a wash-dry toilet, I would say there's nobody on this webinar who doesn't use toilet paper. It's a functional necessity of being able to use a toilet. So where is it positioned? How is it used? If you've got somebody with only right-sided function, how are they going to get the toilet paper off? All those things are really important. And I would say the detail in the design is critical. And then personalisation. Never forget to talk to your clients about personalisation. It doesn't mean to say you have to actually fund it. But for example, I'm often talking to people about plants, colour. Where are you going to put your candles? I know people don't like them, but those smells and things. But they don't have to cost money from a perspective of a grant, but actually can give the client an understanding of how the space will look and feel and smell to them. And that's critical for access and use of that space. So for me, when you're assessing for bathrooms, the devil is in the detail. And actually the small things often yield the biggest reward. And if we don't look at the detail, we can ruin a project design. So a specification from the occupational therapist about what you need, where you need it is key to understanding. And I just put this image up of my house when we were doing some renovations, is that you can never know what's behind a wall. So I don't know how easy you can see it, but when we took down our roof extension that had been done in the early 2000s, it looked like the bricklayer had forgotten a few bricks and a few bits of cement. But actually, the devil's in the detail. Get your design right, get your build right. And what that will mean is your client will actually have a house or an adaptation that works for them. That maximising occupational performance, because that's what we're all about. We want our client to be able to do what they want, when they want, in the environment that's best for them. So how do we do this? Because time is a real pressure, isn't it? So develop resources to enable us all to give clients. And remember, our clients probably have more time than we do. And most of them, not all, will have access to the internet. if you give your clients the features and the benefits of the product that they would need, a lot of clients will go away and work out some products that they might want. Now, it's also important to talk to them about budget and say, we're not going to go for a Villeroy and Bosch toilet. But if they found a toilet that meets their needs and it's maybe a little bit more expensive, ask them, would they like to top it up? Don't say no, say, would you like to top it up? But they have the right to choose some element of product for themselves, because it's their home. That's about dignity. And I put an image here. This is, it's called the Blue Book by Ideal Standard, and it's a website. It used to be a book, but it's a website now. And you can go through it and it gives you all the dimensions so your client can really look at what's going to work for them. But your client has the time to look at what's best to meet their needs. Now, you can say, well, yes, that works as a product, or no, it doesn't. But you have to explain to them why it doesn't. And I've had some really interesting comments about products that won't work for a client. But your clients are the experts in their condition. They have a right to choice and control because the guidance says they do. And our professional standards say we should work in collaboration. So we must give them some idea of choice. So from my perspective, I have a resource of information that's there. So, for example, if you're looking at a bath, like the Abacus Gemini here, it's, what's the height needed? What's the depth needed? What's the length needed? Do you need to get somebody up and down from the bottom of the bath? You can give them all that and give them some choice, but also say, this Abacus Gemini is available. Do you want to go and have a look at it online? They can talk to Abacus about what their needs are as well. We just need to give our clients information. Now, I accept not everybody has the ability to, the time to, the energy to, but those that do, we should really be giving them choice and control over what they have in their home. So I have a list of products. It's literally a spreadsheet. So I've given you an example here. This one is toilets. I have Geberit, I have Closemat, I have a whole load of standard toilets. I have comfort height toilets, so those are the ones that are around 440. And I also have wheelchair accessible ones. And I can share this spreadsheet with my clients and we can use it as a source of discussion on preferences. And your service can develop something like that. It doesn't have to be a huge project. And the one thing you can do, if anybody takes students, it's a great student project. You can give them just toilets or you can give them the whole bathroom. But develop your resources, because if you can give choice and control to your clients, you will have a better outcome for your clients. And finally, I just want to touch on cost and return on investment. Cost is often spoken about a lot when it comes to grants and what is fundable and what's not fundable. I think my first thing to say is, just because our clients have a disability doesn't mean to say we should throw out aesthetics. We have to include it because this is their home. But we also have to ask that question was, well, we will pay £125 for a toilet or £90 for a toilet. Do we ever have that conversation where they say, well, I'd like this toilet, but it's £160? Do we say, well, you can top that up? Speak to your builder or your contractor and top it up. If it meets needs, and as an OT we say functionally this meets your needs, why are we not having that conversation? Why can't people add some money? Now, some people are on low income, and again, I absolutely get that. But I have had conversations with people who say, Well, I said to my children, I don't want a Christmas present or a birthday present. I want them to buy me a toilet. It's a funny conversation you might have with your kids, but family members or charities might top up. We have to give our clients choice and control over what we're putting into their home. It has to functionally meet their need, but also aesthetically meet their needs. So I just wanted to do some figures on that kind of return on investment. ROI, it's called. Governments talk about it a lot. And I thought I'd do it on something simple like grab rails. So you have your very cost-effective grab rails, but I thought I'd just give you an example of 3 to start with. So the NRS ones, and this is not the defunct NRS, the kind of commercial side is still going. And they have some very nice chrome rails ranging from £21 up. Plumbing World has a lovely black. Black is in apparently at £30. And then I've put the vignette. This is a new one that I've just discovered recently when I was looking at Art Nouveau products. And this is a vignette grab rail, which is wooden. I do have concerns about its longevity, but I spoke to them and they promised me it would last and last and last because it's bamboo. Let's wait and see. But you can see how the cost of grab rails can really kind of go from very cheap to the most expensive I've ever put in is Koiko grab rails, which for a 450 grab rail of £450, which are really expensive. But I did actually go back and see the client recently, lady with MS, and it was 20 years ago that these grab rails have gone in. They still look good today as they did 20 years ago. She's not replaced any of them. And then we come to this replacement. So return on investment looks at aesthetics, replacement period, maintenance cost, and recycling as far as I'm concerned. So I thought I'd just do a little bit of work, and I've gone for a Huey grab rail. Huey do some amazing grab rails, and they have all sorts of colours. And then your classic £5 grab rail that's often used as a quick fix in a bathroom to enable somebody to get in and out of a bath. So the Huey grab rail at the top is £105, replacement every year. So the 10-year cost of that is £105. Which is not a huge amount when you break it down. Grab rail that is £5, replacement every year due to rusting. Then you have to add on replacement costs for somebody to go out, remove it, fit the new one. And I worked that out at £65, basing it on an hour's work at £60. That's going out, coming back in. I think that would be really good value, but it felt reasonable to me, plus the £5 for the grab rail. So the 10-year cost would be £265. So actually putting in a grab rail that is beautiful, well designed, is actually more cost effective over a 10-year period than your cheaper grab rails. And I think we need to get away from this. If it's expensive, it's not good value. It absolutely is good value. It's 100% more good value, but also provides for a more aesthetic look for our clients. So there's a return on investment financially. There's a return on investment because it looks nicer. And there's a return on investment for sustainability. And I don't know whether anybody's read the new professional standards of practice that have come out from the Royal College. I didn't mention this last time because it actually hadn't come out as yet, but it actually says, as professionals, we need to understand sustainability and what we're doing, and are we actually being sustainable? So if you have a grab rail like the Huey grab rail that lasts 10 years, it lasts a lot longer, I can assure you. We should be doing it because it is better for the environment. But also to say to you, just thinking about my own parents, we put in Huey grab rails for my parents when they were in their early 80s. My dad used them for 10 years. And when my mum finally moved out of the house after 12 years, I took out all the Huey grab rails because they were still in really good condition, and I've repurposed them and recycled them for various elderly parents or friends. So we have to think about that recycling, repurposing. But it comes back, I think, again to that statement, which is obliging people to have things that they do not want or do not like is wholly wasted money. But also from a sustainability point of view, it's not good investment. So to kind of summarise, as occupational therapists, we should be looking at aesthetics alongside function. They sit hand in hand. They do work together very well. We must understand the importance of the meaning of home to each and every one of our clients. It's about their physical needs, but it's also about their mental health well-being, because our home is so important to us. And a lot of our clients spend significantly more time in their home than we do if we're physically active. So them loving their home and feeling it's the space they want to be in is critical. And the evidence shows that we can use our resources widely, regardless of the sector, private, independent, housing association. And we need to work together with our clients to look at that function and aesthetics, because we need to make sure that our clients have choice and control about what's happening in their home. Thank you.